Residents in the UK will be at the polls tomorrow to vote in a general election. Political analysts are saying the main opposition party, the Labour Party, are on course to win against Rishi Sunak's Conservatives. And joining us now is Benjamin Butterworth, a journalist with inews.co.uk. Benjamin, thanks very much for joining us today.
Good to be with you, Roger.
Well, they're heading to the polls tomorrow, and it looks like 14 years of Conservative Party in power done.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it doesn't just look like the Conservative Party is to lose to the opposition Labour Party. In fact, the polls are so extraordinary in the UK and quite consistent that it looks like it could be the end of the Conservative Party. So the Tories currently have about 350 seats in Parliament, and many of the polls are predicting that they could have just 50 or 60 MPs tomorrow. This is expected not just to be a change of government, but to be the biggest shift in parliamentary politics in Britain for 200 years. In fact, the only modern Western example of what is expected to happen in the UK tomorrow, and the one that political geeks are obsessing over right now, is Canada in 1993. I think that's the only comparison of a Conservative Party being wiped out as it fights with a party to its right, which is the one you just had him on your screen there, Nigel Farage, who is a hardline right-wing Eurosceptic that has split the right-wing vote and is expected to see Keir Starmer, the Labour Party leader, become Prime Minister in maybe 36 hours.
So you're talking about them being wiped down to 50. Would they still have party status at that point? Have they ever seen themselves at that level or even close to it?
No, not even close. This would be the worst result in 200 years, which was when there was a seismic change in British politics. Now, it is unlikely but plausible that they might not even be the second biggest party. Now, for context, the UK Conservative Party has won more elections than any other Western political force. And a lot of this is because we've had Brexit, which hasn't worked out so well. The UK economy has been flatlining. Growth has been about 0%. We've had negative growth for several quarters. And we have had 3 prime ministers in the last 5 years under the Conservatives. So there's a very real anger. And the trend you're seeing is that in constituencies across the UK, people will vote for anybody but the Conservatives, usually the Labour Party. Now, the Labour Party is centre-left. It's probably nearer the Liberals than the NDP, to put it in Canadian terms. But you're also seeing people that would never vote Labour are voting for parties to the right of the Conservatives. And so that's why it looks like it could be the biggest shift that we've had in British politics in a long time.
Now, with assuming Labour wins this, does anything change towards Brexit? Have they made any talk about trying to get back with the EU, or is that kind of a done deal and they won't touch that?
So Keir Starmer was very much against leaving the EU at the time of the referendum and in the previous parliament. He's the Labour leader. However, they've been very clear that they're not going to put Britain back in the EU, and they're not going to open freedom of movement, which was the rule that meant people could pass between EU member countries without having to get a right to live in that country in the first place. So they've been quite clear that there won't be major changes on that. But I think a lot of people in the markets are expecting other things like market integration, rules being aligned, laws, standards in things like food production, that they will be more aligned. And I know that a lot of EU leaders are expecting a much better relationship between the UK and the EU if the Conservatives leave government. But it is one of those things that is the reason Labour lost so badly a couple of years ago is because a lot of working class white people that usually voted for the Labour Party rejected it because they didn't like the EU, they didn't like the establishment. So Labour hasn't pledged a major change on that. The biggest change they're proposing is to build a lot more housing. We have about 4.5 million houses that are needed to be built in the UK. House prices are astronomical, particularly in the southeast and in London at the moment. And so they're planning to rip up greenbelt rules around the countryside to get more houses. And I think that's probably the significant change you'll have. But Keir Starmer has been extremely careful not to scare the horses, as it were. So it's not like a radical left-wing leader is coming in or a significant change. But I think people are sick of the chaos that I think everyone around the world has noticed the UK has been in for the last couple of years.
Okay, Benjamin, thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Benjamin Butterworth is a journalist with inews.co.uk.